Greetings, Ms. Story Mystery here with another collection of creepy true stories. Today's tales include the story of the person who experienced quite a fright while working the night shift, a haunting occurrence in an attic, and an unsettling circumstance while looking in a mirror. Sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 24 of Ms. Story Mystery's Tales of Mysteries and Oddities. I work in a nursing home, and my schedule consists of days, evenings, and nights. It's rough transitioning between days and nights, but everyone that works here has the same shifts, so we just get through them together. The building has about 100 residents with 3 floors. The building is shaped like an L with the north and south wing, and the nursing station's in the middle. The 3rd floor currently only has a few residents living there due to construction, with one of the wings completely shut down because they're ripping out the walls. Due to only a few residents being on that floor, only one nurse is required to be on duty on that floor. I've worked the night shift alone on that floor many times, and never really experienced anything scary or weird. Sure, it's creepy and dark at night, but that was it. I've never believed in the paranormal at all. I had the mindset that I had to see it to believe it. I'm a huge fan of true crime and scary movies and stories and paranormal documentaries, however. A few of my coworkers over the years have talked about how the 3rd floor is haunted. They'd hear knocks at night and see weird things. I was always intrigued to hear about it, but we would always just laugh it off. But that night, a few weeks ago, has really started to change my mind. I was sitting in the nursing station watching movies and playing on my phone. I had just done my rounds and had answered a call bell. I had felt off that night and constantly had that feeling of being watched. I also kept on thinking that I was seeing things out of the corner of my eye. The next part is hard to explain, but I'll try as best I can. As I was sitting there, all of a sudden, a shadow dropped from the ceiling and hovered over me. My heart jumped and I jumped out of my chair. There was no way it would be a shadow from anything, or a car passing by, as the only windows look out into the forest with nothing but trees for miles. After a few moments, I calmed down and left the nursing station to go check on my residents. Nothing seemed amiss, and none of them were awake except for the little old lady at the end of the hall watching her TV shows. As I walked back to the nursing station, I swore I saw feet or a shadow moving under the crack of the door leading to the wing that was closed for construction. I opened the door just to make sure it wasn't a wandering resident from another floor, happens quite often, but there was no one there. I walked back to the nursing station, freaked out, still feeling like someone or something was watching me. I settled back into my chair and tried to watch TikTok videos to get my mind off of it. I was sitting with my back to the window, facing the door. After about an hour of watching videos, I glanced at the clock. It was 3:03. I remember being slightly annoyed as my coworker had promised to come up at 2:50 so I could have my break and go out to my car to have a smoke. Unhealthy, I know. I'm trying to quit, but that night, I needed one. All of a sudden, I hear 3 knocks on the window behind me. I jumped up and looked out the window, and there was nothing there. Flight mode took over, and I just darted down the hall, running into my coworker who was just coming off the elevator. Now, bear in mind, I'm on the 3rd floor, which is pretty high up. There was no stairway, tree, or ladder outside that window, so it was impossible for a person to be outside knocking on the window. I immediately asked my coworker if she knocked or heard any knocking, and she said no. She could see how shaken up I was and offered to switch floors for the remainder of the shift. I was very thankful, as being on the 2nd floor means you're with another nurse, so I wouldn't be alone. I went out to my car and had a few smokes and just tried to calm down. I talked to the nurse on 2nd floor, and she didn't seem too surprised. She's heard knocking up there, and seen and heard things she can't explain. A lot of people have died up there, and after that night, I honestly don't know what to believe anymore. I haven't ever felt fear like I did that night, and I've since worked a few night shifts up there and didn't experience anything like that again. Could it be that I was just tired? I don't know, but I won't ever forget how I felt that night. So, like 3 years ago, my mom worked for this lady who lived out of state but owned a very beautiful historic house about 3 blocks away from my mom's house. So, of course, she was happy to work there. She could just walk down the street and be at work, which also meant she could be there quickly if there was an emergency. She had no supervision because she was there by herself 99% of the time, checking in people, cleaning, cooking for the guests, doing laundry for them, etc. A woman and her daughter, I think it was her daughter, checked into the B&B, and while my mom was checking them in, the girl had this odd look about her. And I distinctly remember thinking to myself, man, this kid looks like she's seeing things that aren't there. Which was weird, because after my mom checked them in and was showing them to their room upstairs, the little girl asked my mom, "Who are all those people?" My mom says, "Who?" She says, "All those people following you." I'm pretty skeptical when it comes to the supernatural, but this genuinely freaked me out. Most of all, because everyone I know who was ever in that bed and breakfast, including myself, agrees that it has a very unsettling vibe. Like you're being watched. I'm actually getting chills thinking about it. The whole place just gave us the willies. My mom keeps a lot of our old toys from the 90s in our attic. The attic is just a storage area. Nobody has beds up there. The bedrooms are all under the attic, and my sister's room is at the opposite side of the house than my parents' room. One night, my sister got home late from working night shift at the hospital. She randomly started to hear some faint music, but had no idea where it was coming from. After some sleuth work, she realized the music was only in one corner of the room. She got scared and woke my mom up to see what was going on. They realized the music was coming from the attic. When they mustered up the courage to go up and see what was playing it, they discovered that it was a toy at the bottom of our 90s toy box. The batteries had to have been at least 25 years old, and nobody had been in the attic. It started playing by itself out of nowhere. I've developed this habit of staying up late to tidy up around the house. It just seems easier to get things done when everyone's asleep, especially since I've always been a night owl. With my own family now, the quiet nights are my go-to for chores. A few months ago, there was this one night where I ended up staying awake way past my usual bedtime. I was engrossed in some task near the living room mirror when, out of nowhere, I happened to look up. What I saw still gives me a bit of a shiver. It was just my reflection, nothing out of the ordinary, except for its smile. That smile was anything but friendly. It had this sort of cold, angry look to it that just sent a shiver down my spine. I was freaked out, blinked a few times, and it was like nothing happened. But since then, I've been trying to wrap things up before 3 a.m. Dreams have always had this odd way of sticking with me. Even as a kid, I had this recurring presence in my dreams, and it's followed me even after moving continents. It's like a shapeshifter, I guess. The first time it showed up in my dreams, it took on the form of a painting of the Virgin Mary from my church. And yep, you guessed it. That same unsettling smile was there too. Now I'm in my 30s, and that thing still pops up in my dreams a couple of times a year, usually pretending to be someone friendly. Lately, it's been trying to get me to trust it, though I can't quite remember its words, but that gut feeling of something's not right is always there. So, in my dream, I end up saying my prayers like crazy until I wake up. And then there are the odd moments in life, like my old cat. She once had this bizarre episode where she just went nuts, hissing, scratching, all while staring at an empty corner in my room. I was puzzled naturally, so I picked her up and brought her back to that spot just to double check, and she went all defensive again, like she was afraid of something. But honestly, I never saw a thing in that room. These experiences keep me on my toes, though, making me wonder what's really going on behind the scenes. My story begins when I was around 6 years old. I grew up in this pretty old house from the 1920s in a nice neighborhood. Back then, I shared a room with my little sister, but she never went through what I did. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night and saw this guy standing by my bed. He had on a hat and a long coat. The room was pretty dark, but the closet light on the other side let me see his shape, even though not much else. I freaked out and closed my eyes immediately, pretending to be asleep. My logic was that if he knew I saw him, he might try to take me away so I wouldn't tell anyone. The next morning, I told my family about it, but they didn't make a big deal out of it. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, I got my own room in the house. I hadn't thought about that guy for a while. I used to sleep with my door a bit open so I could see the hallway light. Then, one night, I woke up, and there he was again, just standing near my bedroom door like a statue. I was really scared, but I couldn't move because he was blocking the way out. So I did the pretending to be asleep thing again. The next day, I got my dad to check the whole house, even my room. And every night after that, I made him look in the closets and under the bed, but there was nothing. Here's where it gets really creepy. By the time I was 14, I had moved into a room in the attic. It was finished, kind of like the attic in that show, The Brady Bunch, according to my mom. There was a door at the bottom of the stairs that led up to the attic. When you got to the top of the stairs, there was this big playroom on the left, and my room was right there on the right. For about a year, I could hear that door at the bottom open and close, then footsteps coming up the stairs, and someone moving around in the playroom, sitting on the couch, moving stuff around. The latch on my bedroom door was broken, so I'd pile up big pillows to keep it shut. But I knew someone was in that playroom because my door would shake from their footsteps. Some nights, I somehow got brave enough to grab my tennis racket and swing the door open, but all I saw was darkness. But I could totally feel there was someone there. Strong feeling. You know that feeling when you're being stared at? It was like that, just way worse. And it came with this really scary, heavy feeling. I'd ask my family in the morning if they'd been upstairs at night, but I was always the last one to go to bed. As I lay there listening to whatever was in the playroom, my mind would wander, and I'd realize that if someone was in our house, I wouldn't know because I was all alone up here. And if someone was upstairs on my level, no one downstairs would know. I felt super vulnerable and isolated. One night, I was in bed, and I heard that door at the bottom close, then the steps, and the usual sounds in the playroom. But this time, it was much stronger. Then I heard them coming to my door, which hadn't happened before, and they started tapping really softly, like they wanted my attention. I've never been so scared. I couldn't move, couldn't even breathe properly. It felt like I was frozen, just waiting for whatever it was to come and get me. The tapping went on, like a finger slowly going down my door. Eventually, I snapped out of it and grabbed whatever I could. I think I held up one of those big pillows and I dashed downstairs to my parents' room. I didn't even look into the playroom because I didn't want to know what was in there. Looking back, it's like that thing was trying to warn me or something, like I shouldn't be up in the attic. Strangely enough, about a week later, we moved to a different house across town, and I haven't had any ghostly experiences since then. Before I was born, my family moved into a house that was around 3 years old at the time. There weren't any deaths or weird stuff associated with it, just the builder had lived there and then decided to sell it. When I was a baby, my mom would tell stories about my little sister experiencing spooky things in her bedroom, all related to her ceiling fan. She'd tell my mom that she used to see a little man running around on the fan blades. Some nights she'd wake up and this little figure would be staring right at her. It freaked out both my mom and my sister so much that my sister ended up sleeping in their room for a while. Eventually, she got used to sleeping through the night and it stopped happening. Jump ahead to when I was 4 years old. My two older sisters often looked after me. One evening, while our parents were out for dinner, we were hanging out in our basement rec room. The rec room is right below the kitchen in our two-story house. While we were there, all three of us heard footsteps coming from the kitchen above us. Knowing that nobody else was home, we decided to grab baseball bats, yeah, we were kind of silly, and check out the noise. We took our dog with us, and she immediately started acting weird in the hallway. We searched everywhere and found nothing, so we just waited in the kitchen until our parents came back. This happened more than once, too. Then there's a story from my mom. She always seemed to have the most intense experiences. My dad had surgery on his back, and to help him heal better, my mom slept on an air mattress in the living room for a week. Our living room was one big open space, and where she slept was right next to a wall. While facing that wall, she woke up to someone going, "Psst." Thinking it was one of us kids, she turned around to check, but there was nothing there. She turned back to try to sleep, and then she felt a gust of air blow across her face and hair, as if someone had blown on her. It scared her so much, but she couldn't see anyone. This happened every single night, multiple times each night during the whole week she slept in the living room. As I got older, it became more common to hear strange noises when there was no one else at home. Faucets turning on in the kitchen, cupboard doors opening and closing on their own, footsteps that couldn't be explained. I tried my best to ignore it for the most part. There's this one thing that happened to both my oldest sister and me at about the same time. We were having dinner one night, and my oldest sister says, "Something really weird happened last night. I turned off my bedroom lights, got into bed, and was just lying there. Then I heard footsteps at the end of my bed. They came up to the side of my bed and stopped right next to my head. I almost spit out my food. I was too scared to admit at the time, but that exact same thing happened to me the night before. I had a boyfriend staying over that night, and even he heard it. We were both pretty freaked out." The last story before we moved out, not because of the strange stuff, but because we grew up and my parents wanted a smaller place, happened when I was around 17. My middle sister and I loved playing pranks on each other, especially when one of us was in the shower. It wasn't uncommon for someone to pour cold water on you or turn off the lights and close the door while you were showering. To keep my sister from doing that, I'd lock the bathroom door and block it with her bathroom drawer. She knew how to unlock it, so the drawer kept her out. I did this every time I showered without really thinking about it. Then, one morning, while I was running late and the house was empty, I locked the door, pulled out the drawer like always, and got in the shower. When I finished, I found the drawer not only closed, but also stuck shut. I noped out of the house that day. It wasn't a super scary experience, but I'm not the bravest when it comes to this stuff. Everyone has their limits. I told my sister what happened that day, and she accused me of lying, saying that the drawer was stuck. She had to take it apart and fix it, and I just left it at that. Months later, my middle sister got a job in a different part of our province, and I hadn't seen her in a while. She called me to catch up, and she brought up the whole bathroom drawer incident. She said, "Remember when I called you a liar? Well, guess what happened that night?" She went on to describe how she had gone to bed really late that night, and as she was checking her phone before sleep, she suddenly felt like she had to look at her ceiling fan. When she turned, there was this bright orange flash of light that came out of the fan, almost like it was directed at her. It went past her head, and she felt a rush of air. After that, she was frozen in bed for over 2 hours. She couldn't move or call for help, she said. Knowing my sister, how fearless she usually is, hearing her talk about being that scared really got to me. It's been more than 10 years since we left that house, and what's weirdest is that there have been more than 3 owners of that house. We lived there for 18 years. Each family that left ended up getting divorced. Small town gossip. Even my parents had a really tough time while we were there, almost getting divorced themselves. It was just a strange little house, you know? I'm not sure what was going on there, but I'm just glad to be out of it. I haven't experienced anything weird since leaving. Well, that's all for episode 24. I hope you enjoyed these strange and mysterious tales. If you like my storytelling, please like, give me a comment, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe. If you know anyone who might also be into my content, please consider sharing a link to my channel to help me out as I aim to expand my audience. Now, if you have any true stories that you would like to share with me, feel free to send a message to itsmisstorymystery@gmail.com. Until next time, take care of yourself and stay spooky.